In the year 2025, it's hard to see what Mission Impossible was through the prism of what it has become. While the recent Mission films are characterized by meticulous practical action spectacle that can seem all but lost in the era of MCU green screen slop, I mean, hey, no shade at Thunderbolts, there are clearly exceptions to the rule, that's not where things began. Perhaps the most striking thing you'll notice when revisiting the first Mission is that it feels so, for lack of a better word, authored. It's as much a Brian De Palma film as it is a pillar of the now massive franchise. This is not to say that John Woo, Brad Bird, Christopher McQuarrie, hell, even J.J. Abrams did not put their own spin on the franchise. No, but the De Palma mission is singular. Now, I'm sure your interest in this particular video speaks more to your investment in the Mission IP than the work of one of our great auteurs, but to help situate the uninitiated, let's do a quick flyover on the god De Palma. You'll thank me later. Brian De Palma is a filmmaker who came to prominence in the 1970s, and he's best known for films like Carrie, Scarface, and The Untouchables, films that dominated the culture and spoke to broader appetites. However, his body of work is much more fascinating when taken as a whole. He began his career making genuinely subversive political films with Robert De Niro in the late 60s and early 70s. Hi Mom is a fucking deranged classic, you should definitely go check it out, but eventually settled on his true calling as a sort of Hitchcockian protege, whose interests often live at the intersection of eroticism, obsession, and death. He is one of the great practitioners of the erotic thriller, from Dress to Kill to Body Double to Femme Fatale, but he's also responsible for bizarre one-off masterpieces like his Paul Williams musical, The Phantom of the Paradise. If you're less familiar with his work, I strongly recommend you dive in. He's one of the greats for a reason. Now, in 1996, Brian De Palma took on what would seem a left-field project given his work to that point, the reboot of a classic television series for the big screen. In doing so, he would create one of the most striking and subversive entries in the modern espionage genre. While later installments would evolve into sleek, stunt-driven spectacles more akin to superhero films than spy thrillers, the original Mission Impossible was something entirely different, an atmospheric, cynical, and morally complex web of deception. And it's sexy. I mean, real sexy, real good stuff. It stripped espionage of its glamour and instead depicted it as a world populated by seedy criminals, amoral opportunists, and masked manipulators. Something that clearly came out on the heels of the end of the Cold War, where the nature of spycraft was in an existential state and the players in disarray, navigating a decaying underbelly. For all the franchise's future commercial success, De Palma's film remains the most honest and best adaptation of the original concept. This is not to say that it's not also a fun film, it's incredibly entertaining. I mean, even as a kid, I watched this film and was floored by its atmosphere and kinetic energy, despite having next to no understanding what a knock list was or what Ethan's plan was. I mean, it was all just like a bunch of jargon and nonsense, and later I caught on, but this is a doozy if you're watching this as a young kid. But you know what? It's a romp. It's the rare blockbuster that dares to ask, what if the good guys weren't so good after all? At its core, Mission Impossible isn't a fantasy, but a nightmare. It's a paranoid thriller wherein trust is a liability and truth is always several masks deep. No one can be trusted. You'd be a keen observer to note the influence of Pakula's paranoid 70s thrillers in this film. Remember all those movies people said Captain America the Winter Soldier is like? Well, Mission Impossible is actually like those movies. And that's no shade to Winter Soldier. I enjoy that film, but come on guys, let's be real. De Palma is known for his fascination with voyeurism and psychological tension and filters the world of espionage through this signature style. Canted angles, split diopters, claustrophobic close-ups, and labyrinthian plotting. He doesn't present spycraft as glamorous or noble, probably because at that point in time it was the least glamorous occupation you could have, but rather as a cynical game of manipulation and betrayal that will leave you with dead friends and blood on your hands that may not come off in the sink no matter how hard you scrub. The agents here are not martini-sipping playboys or idealistic patriots. They're thieves, mercenaries, and disillusioned operatives trying to survive in a world that uses and discards them, and at this point, they're more likely to discard them than use them. The later films would recast the ensemble as noble heroes with no higher imperative than protecting the lives of those they love, but here, It's a game of egos. And to be honest, that is much more interesting. It's fascinating to see the arc of cynicism in this franchise from the first film to the eighth. De Palma began with all the skepticism in the world, and eventually the edge of the franchise would be sanded down completely. In its first outing, all the institutions are fucked. There's a bleak quality to the film that distinguishes Mission Impossible from its espionage contemporaries. It's not the bureaucratic realism of John le Carré, though it shares his cynicism. It's not yet the fantasy escapism of James Bond, or at least in 1996, the films that James Bond used to be, especially if you look back at the Roger Moore era. It in fact critiques that very archetype. Where Bond, specifically the Roger Moore films, and definitely some of the Connery stuff, is a suave and seemingly impervious hero, Hunt is frantic and morally compromised. This is not the Ethan Hunt who is told by everyone around him how great a guy he is. This guy is a little bit of an asshole. Where Bond's world is exotic and stylized, Hunt's is dingy, paranoid, and brutal. In this way, Mission Impossible is the anti-Bond, a film that uses the tropes of the genre only to deconstruct them. Mission opens brilliantly by introducing you to the intense but clearly competent team of IMF agents who surround Ethan Hunt. They're seedy as all hell. After extracting crucial intelligence through a ruse of masks and expert manipulation, they sit around a table drinking beers and cracking jokes. They don't take themselves particularly seriously, partially because, the nature of their work is in disarray. They have no idea really why they're doing the things that they're doing. They're just really good at it. This almost feels like a completely different franchise when you consider how self-seriousness would become a hallmark of the Mission Impossible films the longer they went on. These agents are young, they're friends, they talk shit. Despite ultimately performing their duties, they're all individually motivated, and their professional success is compromised by their personal relationships. Right after we meet them, they're sent to a gala where they need to procure the knock list, one half of a file that will reveal the names and aliases of every agent in the employ of the IMF. It's a document that threatens to unmask anyone who has ever made the mistake of putting one on. Mission Impossible is not subtle in telling you what it's about. This is a movie that asks characters two questions. One, who are you? And two, who are you really? After hatching what seems like a tight plan with masks, compromised security systems, and spy gadgets, things quickly go to shit. The team is not the only team that has been dispatched to the party. Agents are impaled on an elevator components. That one still really gets me. That is a fucking gnarly death. They're stabbed to death in a sultry blue haze and blown to shit with car bombs. It's pretty heavy. The fun-loving gang you meet at the top of the film is gone, and now their golden boy is forced into a dark night of the soul, questioning every truth he has ever taken for granted. Ethan Hunt is introduced here as a young, cocky operative, not yet the noble, selfless hero he would later become. Instead, he's a morally ambiguous figure, flawed, driven by vengeance, and deeply aware of the masks he must wear to survive. See what I'm doing here? And it's not that he's a bad guy, far from it, but he doesn't have the pristine sheen ascribed to him in subsequent entries that twists his maniac into a messiah. Here, his calculated lies to everyone around him reveal a character who manipulates as easily as he is manipulated. He's an impeccable wielder of the blade, but he's no less vulnerable than anyone else. Even his quest to clear his name is framed less as a pursuit of justice and more as a personal vendetta, which stands in stark opposition to the films that would follow. Ethan and Luther have a moral conscience that motivates them to keep the knock list out of evil hands, but they're ultimately dangling a carrot to meet their own needs. In truth, he's not saving the world, he's saving himself. The line between hero and villain is murky at best, and De Palma leans into that ambiguity with a sort of glee. The best illustration of this complex characterization is in Ethan's relationship with Claire Phelps, wife of the late, spoiler alert, not really late, Jim Phelps. In the film's opening, Ethan's concern for her is tender and palpable. Shortly thereafter, we learn that she has another man. Ethan, of course, knows this. When Claire is revealed to be the only other survivor of the IMF massacre, Ethan aggressively interrogates her in a way that walks a complex line of power and sensuality that is genuinely uncomfortable to watch, but it pales in comparison to what will follow. When Ethan has the realization that Jim never really died and is responsible for the deaths of his entire team, he has the opportunity to confront Claire with this information. but instead, knowing that she's probably also in on the operation because of his intuition, he continues to play the part, manipulating her into an intimate encounter. It's tactical, and while, yes, nasty, it's rather effective spycraft. It's a moment where Ethan is forced to get his hands dirty because he's the one holding all the cards. He has to continue to play the hand. And while he might feel a bit uncomfortable, that's also the nature of the job, and he winds up embracing that less than glamorous side in order to see the mission through. Now, you might be tempted to say, all right, buddy, this is an interesting analysis, but does the text support the idea that this is really intentional on the part of De Palma?
Oh, absolutely.
The key to understanding the filmmaker's perspective is in the way that he reinterprets a key character from the original television series, Jim Phelps. I know a lot of people weren't too fond of the former protagonist of the Mission Impossible television series not only being recast in this film, but also being revealed to be the villain, but it actually shows De Palma's understanding of where this guy would go as a character rather than what people might want to see as just being fans of the television show. The twist of his criminal culpability is not merely a plot twist within the film, but an active subversion of a character iconic to many. Far from being cheap fan betrayal, this twist is narratively and thematically perfect. While De Palma is clearly interested in the bones of the franchise, he wants to reinterpret its characters and world in a way that feels more authentic to its place and time. Phelps, a relic of the Cold War, is disillusioned and angry, lashing out at the system that no longer needs him. His fall mirrors the moral decay of the institution he once served and functions as a warning of what Ethan himself could become. It's a deeply American narrative. The Vietnam veteran we send off to experience unspeakable violence and horror, only to abandon them in the streets when they return home. The seeds of franchise-wide hero worship are planted here. Phelps was once revered, now he's reviled, and the question lingers, could the same fate befall Ethan? And if you ask me, it probably should have. The film's climax, a literal mask reveal, is not just a plot twist, but a metatextual commentary. De Palma structures the film as a series of performances where identity is fluid and everyone is playing a role. Ethan Hunt is a persona crafted to mask his humble Midwestern background. There's no truth on the surface of this guy. It's espionage boiled down to its thematic essence, deception, subterfuge, and the psychological toll of constantly pretending to be someone else. Hunt's kind of a cocky little shit, and he goes out of his way to assert his dominance over those he wishes to play or distrusts. He's also a bit of a sleazy provocateur. May or may not have slept with Phelps' significantly younger wife. He's flirting with Max. I mean, De Palma really plays into Cruz's weird sexual energy, making the character far more devious than he's become in latter films. And man, I just bring back the morally gray spycraft, goddammit. Like, that's the shit that makes Ethan Hunt a really interesting protagonist. Now, I waxed poetic about what this film does so well on a character level, but it begs iterating that this is a gorgeous looking movie with so much detail to reward its audience on repeat viewings. De Palma has always been fascinated by voyeurism within the text of his films, and that fascination extends to the way he constructs them. And look, there's no better way to exploit voyeurism than in a fucking spy movie. The audience is interpolated as a voyeur, gazing upon that which we're not meant to see. In this way, the film can be challenging because it's not constructed to easily reveal its secrets, but that's what makes it such a joy to return to. You're constantly observing clues and minute bits of character that simulate the process of discovery similar to what Ethan is experiencing. It's a testament to De Palma's brilliant editorial instincts in the way he uses ellipses and misdirection to enhance the film's figurative sleight of hand. As the franchise would go on, the films would become more of a metatext on the life of Tom Cruise and his celebrity, and there's not been a lot of room for the filmmakers to break from the way he cultivates his own image. It's no secret that Cruise is the most recognizable face of Scientology and all of the evil that it represents. I mean, he's the face of a cult that actively covers up allegations of sexual assault, abduction, aggressive indoctrination. I mean, the list goes on. I think De Palma clearly saw the facade of Tom Cruise and figured out a way to have a film and a character that revealed the true seedy identity of the guy underneath. I mean, it's the whole American Psycho thing where Christian Bale was asked about who inspired his take on Patrick Bateman. He said that the character was actually based loosely on Tom Cruise. And in a way, De Palma understood what appealed to Cruise about acting, the ability to mask his freaky persona with heroic action figures. He can be whoever he wants to be and utilize his on-screen persona to reshape public opinion, specifically in the years after, the mania that happened in the early 2000s. And whatever your opinions on Tom Cruise are, you have to admire the fact that metatextual commentary is interesting. It's what makes Tom Cruise as Ethan Hunt an interesting casting choice. The filmmakers that get the best performances out of Tom Cruise are the ones who recognize the kind of person he is and the weird energy that he gives off and know how to employ that to great effect. I mean, just look at what Stanley Kubrick did in Eyes Wide Shut. As the Mission franchise went on, Ethan hews closer to the archetype of noble, infallible hero, but De Palma could see from the jump that the hero's mask is so much less compelling than the frail, contradictory humanity it conceals. Where the McQuarrie films are a celebration of Cruise's movie star image, the original is its very prescient deconstruction that has only grown more salient over the last 30 years. Mission Impossible hints at an ending more honest and impactful than any of its sequels have dared to deliver. Ethan doesn't walk away a hero, he walks away burned out, shaken, and uncertain. The now famous exchange between him and Luther.
Why don't you come back with me?
Just don't know why I'd be doing it.
It's not just a button on the story, it's a thesis statement. Ethan has seen too much. He's disillusioned, not vindicated. The final shot may have been the start of a franchise for Luther, but for Ethan, it's the end of the road. And yet, what followed, of course, was a complete rebranding. As the Mission films leaned further into its adrenaline-fueled action and global stakes, they lost the introspective, critical edge that defined De Palma's film. The franchise became about Ethan Hunt, the savior, the superhero, the only man you can trust. All the suspicion, all the paranoia, all the moral ambiguity, all gone. It's telling that the IMF, once a morally ambiguous and deeply flawed organization, is now a stand-in for Cruise's own invincible brand. The man who once questioned the point of going back never left. Instead, he made the franchise his church. It is a haunting moment of self-reflection followed by 3 decades of trying to outrun that reality. I mean, in hindsight, it's kind of like Cruise admitting that Mission Impossible is a dead end that will effectively end the incredible run of dramatic roles he was doing at the time before proceeding to sprint down in any way because the alternative is people seeing him for who he truly is. It's inspired how much this film resists becoming a franchise, only to be wrestled into submission by Tom Cruise's desire to turn it into one. Still, the brilliance of the original endures, and it is a brilliant film. It's a film that rewards repeat viewings, not just for its intricate plotting, but for its atmospheric depth and thematic resonance. From the opening sequence's brutality to the unforgettable Langley heist to Phelps's reveal, De Palma plays the audience like a goddamn grand piano, constantly forcing us to question what we know and who we trust. Every glance, every line of dialogue, every shot composition is part of the puzzle. It's the rare, big-budget film that treats its viewers like adults and its characters like real people. Flawed, compromised, unknowable. In an era of increasingly homogenous action franchises, the first Mission Impossible stands out more than ever. It's messy. There's a slight mean-spiritedness to everything that enriches the seediness of spycraft. Like Dunlow, who gets poisoned, Ethan's father figure being the guy who set him up, Kittredge going after Ethan's family farm, framing them to get Hunt, the entire team getting brutally slaughtered at the top. De Palma wasn't messing around. In crafting this morally gray and deeply human espionage tale, De Palma doesn't just use the spy genre, he interrogates it. And in doing so, it delivers not only one of the best films in the series, but a landmark of the espionage genre. Missions 2 through 8 are a mask. Mission Impossible is the face.